Hi, this is Nick on, I forgot what date it is, 18th of July, with the next episode of the kind of idea that inspired me to create this program, The Message You Were Born to Share. And today, the idea is, I think what we often really don't fully understand is how much our individual experience has a universal resonance. I think often we think, oh, it's just me that's experiencing this, nobody else would understand it. And that's why we hold ourselves back. And often we think many of the experiences of our life, whether they're positive experiences or less, more painful experiences, that we can often feel kind of ashamed or embarrassed about them, and we think, oh, I can't tell people about that. So we end up putting on a brave face or a cheerful face. And I think what people are hungry for today is authenticity, is to say, look, here's my experience. This is what it's like to be me. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, this is my experience. And I think we're hungry to learn from people who are willing to share their individual experience and say how their experience of life really is, not how we want other people to think it is, but how it truly is for us. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to tell you an abbreviated version of a story, a personal story. So I'm going to launch into the story now and share it with you, and then get you hopefully to see the significance of what I'm wanting to get across today. I think about 3 years ago it was now, I had this incredible possibility suddenly come to me where somebody contacted me and said, could you coach my husband? It's his 50th birthday next week, and he loves your books. So as a 50th birthday gift, I'd love to buy him an hour or two of your coaching. Can I do that for him? And then there was a little PS and said, unless you happen to be available next week and could come to visit him on his birthday. I thought, wow, that's interesting. So I spoke to the lady, and to cut a long story short, they lived in Switzerland. Basically, I freed up my diary to be able to go to Switzerland the next week to be a surprise guest at this guy's 50th birthday party. And as I was at Heathrow waiting to fly out to Switzerland, I felt quite emotional. It was a real adventure. It was like such a positive kind of validation for me to be paid to be a guest at somebody's birthday party and then coach them afterwards. But I felt there was something more going on, and I just kind of dived underneath what was going on for me, and it suddenly dawned on me that this represented almost to the day 25 years since I left my corporate job in order to start my business. So it was like an anniversary, and I reflected back to 25 years previously to who I was and how I thought about myself then, and I what I was remembering was when I left my business, when I left my corporate job to start my business, I was all full of anticipation and hope and excitement about becoming an entrepreneur and starting my own business doing the things I love. But instead of starting my business in a blaze of glory and inspiration, I actually fell into a big black hole of depression for quite a while. And to be honest, and this is what I had never really talked about to anybody, was I was actually quite suicidal. I just thought, I don't know if I want to do this. It just seems like it's such a mountain to climb. And I realised, that in my corporate career I'd been very driven, and all the things that I'd been driven to avoid suddenly began to come to the surface once I'd given myself time and space by leaving my corporate career. So the reason I was so emotional was because I realised, how far I'd come in 25 years from somebody who just had such low self-esteem, just thought so little of himself and felt so insignificant, to being invited and paid to be a guest at somebody's 50th birthday party in another country and having a fabulous experience, and the weekend turned out to be wonderful. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's a storytelling coach, and I reflected this to her, and she said, well, why don't you tell the story of that? Why don't you share the story of what happened when you left your corporate career to start your business, and that period of your life where you were very depressed and suicidal? I thought, well, I can't tell that story. I'd deliberately not told many people about it because I felt embarrassed and ashamed, and it's like, well, I wanted to present myself as somebody who was successful and together, not somebody who had been very depressed and suicidal. So the first thing I did was actually write the story. And then when I wrote it, I actually found it relatively easy to write that story of that period of my life. But then I spoke to my friend Beverly and said, but if I publish this, are people going to think worse of me? And she said, well, I don't think so, but the only way you're going to find out is by by doing it. So what I did was I published the story and I let people know about it. And I've got to tell you, I have never had before or since, as much feedback for one story or one thing that I'd written than I did for that story. And what I'll actually do is I'll post a link to that story underneath this video here so that you can read it for yourself. But I told the story of leaving my corporate career, going into a big black hole, and then eventually starting my business. And I have had so far, I think 100, 150 comments, all of them positive, and so many of them saying, well, I felt like that at times too. So the significance, I'm telling you a personal story here, but the significance of the story I'm telling you is we have no idea, I had no idea, we have no idea generally, I don't think, how much, when we're really honest about our own experience, how much we're going to touch something universal. But I think we often resist being very personal because we think we're going to switch people off, or people are going to judge us, or we still feel vulnerable around it. Whereas actually, I think when we're really honest about our own experience, we'll create a resonance with people. People will go, oh, thank God, I thought it was just me that felt like that. I felt so embarrassed, but you talking about it has made it easier for me to talk about it. You talking about it has made it easier for me to accept that about myself. And, the big lesson for me has been about acceptance of those parts of me that felt so small and unafraid and insignificant, and not to judge them and not to be embarrassed, but just to say, hey, I have those parts of me. They're not in the driving seat anymore, but they're still in me. And then I've just found how many other people say, yeah, I can resonate with that, parts of me feel like that too. So this is the significance of what I'm saying is, what we go through personally, there are probably millions of people that go through personally. And when we're courageous enough and authentic enough and inspiring enough, I think, to be willing to just let people see how it's been for us, we'll touch something in other people, and that ripple effect goes on that we often don't know the impact that we're going to have by sharing our story. So that's part of the thinking behind this program that I've developed is, I suppose the message I would share out of that little kind of episode of my life is what feels like the end of the road isn't the end of the road. It's actually a rebirth. It's a new beginning. I felt like I'd reached the end of the road at the age of 31. I felt like I just couldn't go on, and there was no point in going on, and I just didn't have the resources to go on. Here I am, now 28 years later with a successful business, written 14 books, done amazing things. So my message from that one chapter would be there's always hope. Even when we feel like we give up and there is no hope, there is hope, even if we can't see it. So I'm sure you would have messages like that to share. You've had difficult experiences, but it doesn't just have to be the difficult experiences. It could be that we want to share messages of joy, messages of inspiration, messages of happiness. Some of the most inspiring people I meet or come across are sharing very joyful messages, and ultimately my message there is joyful. There is hope. You can be reborn. You can have a great life, even if things feel like they're falling apart. So part of the reason I've developed this program is to help you get your positive messages out into the world, your messages of hope, your messages of inspiration, your messages of possibility, because that's been my journey really. And all the messages I share have been born out of my own personal experience, and I think this is what I personally love about what I do is I've taken all the raw material of my own life experience and turned it into something that I hope is a gift for other people. And that's what I want to help and inspire you to do if that's what you feel called to do. So that's really why I'm telling you this story and why I've put this program together. So I hope that's touched something in you, inspired you perhaps a bit, or resonated with you. Just a message from Sean here saying I'll be 50 in 5 years and you'll only need an oyster. Yeah, thank you for that, Sean. Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this. Hope it's touched something in you. Program starts in a couple of weeks if you'd like to be part of it. So thank you so much. God bless. Bye-bye.